Let's talk about a tiny camera. Let's talk about the RX100 Mark VII. I think it's safe to say the RX100 Mark VII is the undisputed champion of tiny, powerful cameras. It's about the size of a deck of cards. It has a flip-up screen, super fast autofocus, pop-out viewfinder, and super high burst rate for photography. Has a decent zoom range and pretty good quality 4K footage. To show how small this camera is, let's compare it to a few other small cameras that I own. You can see the size difference compared to my Canon V1. And also here's the difference between the RX100 and the Pocket 3. And lastly, here's the difference between a iPhone 17 Pro Max versus the RX100 Mark VII. And you can see how small this camera is when powered off. The Viewfinder is my favorite. It's what really sold me on wanting this camera. In the sunny days I have here in California, I could pop up the Viewfinder. I could also use it as a third placement to stabilize the camera for video. I did get a bit of dust in mine. I've been trying to blow it out. Other than that, I love the Viewfinder. It's not the greatest quality, but it's a Viewfinder. It's serviceable. This camera also has amazing burst speed for photos. Here's a little example. I'll set it on high and do a spray and pray here to show you. It makes a cute little shutter sound as it's taking the photos if you're not on silent shutter. The only problem I have with these burst speeds is the buffer takes a long time to clear. So you'll see here, I took a large number of photos and it takes a bit for the buffer to clear. So if you're shooting a burst of some birds or something like that, and then you want to switch over to video, you'll have to wait until that buffer clears before you can start any video or switch to anything else. You can't complain much about this as a travel walk-around camera. This thing is tiny. I can fit it in a shirt pocket. I can fit it in a pants pocket. I can just hold it in my hand. You can't even see it when it's in my hand. It's tiny. One of the other negatives about a tiny camera is a tiny battery. The good news is these batteries are tiny, so you can carry a few of them with no problems. The camera does have micro USB. I don't like to take multiple cables. I've pretty much moved everything over to USB-C. So I did find this little charging case which holds 2 batteries and has a USB-C connection. So I generally take this with me on trips, so that way I can just bring a cable to charge all of my various accessories. This works out really well, and I highly recommend finding something like this. The funny thing about this camera is I've always wanted one since they came out quite a few years ago. I've been waiting for the Mark 8 version. I was hoping it would have USB-C. I was hoping it would have 10-bit video. There's a few other things I feel like could be updated. Maybe 4K 60 would be wonderful, but otherwise, if they could keep this body the same, just add the better video specs and the better charging cable, that would be awesome. Since the Mark 8 version never came out, I ended up just buying this Mark 7 version. Still really happy I did. I've had it for about 6-7 months. And I'm starting to use it more and more as I get used to it and kind of get acquainted to its features and its usability. Photography is what I'm most impressed about it. I generally kind of use this as a backup camera. I'll use my A6700 or my G9 Mark II, and I'll just kind of keep this in case something happens. It's also really fast. Like it focuses fast, it zooms pretty fast, it locks onto the subject fast. So it's just a powerful, quick, little easy camera. So as it's been in my bag a lot of times and I haven't used it all that much, when I have used it, I've been impressed. So I'm starting to use it more.
As far as video, I think this camera has a very clean and sharp image at 4K. It maxes out at 4K 30, but it does have some higher frame rates in 1080. I just stick with 4K. If I need slow motion, I'll use a different camera. You can even get a little background blur if you're close to your subject in the wide end at 2.8 or use the 200mm zoom on a semi-near subject. Close focusing is also decent with this lens. The camera does have a mic input, but doesn't have any place to mount the mic, so you need to be creative if audio is a concern of yours. I have also noticed this camera does get hot to the touch. I did set the heat threshold to high in the menu, but for me, I don't shoot long form content, especially not with this camera. It's just clips here and there for me, so I've never had an overheating issue. I typically shoot in the Rec 709 profile. I find that allows me to grade it slightly to my liking in the end. This camera is only 8-bit for video, so there's not too much latitude to push and pull, but you'll see from some of my examples I'm showing, it's not too bad. You can get the colors a little bit different than the Sony colors that most people don't like with this generation of cameras. As far as stabilization, as with most cameras, I find this one looks best on a tripod. Unfortunately, with a tiny camera, you don't really want to lug a tripod around with you all the time. So the last few weeks I've been experimenting with some various techniques on how to stabilize the footage, both while shooting and in post. I have a goal of using this camera more and more as a travel camera in the future due to its size, so getting the stabilization for video down would be a huge milestone to allow me just to take the RX100 on trips and leave my larger cameras at home. One cool feature about the stabilization of this camera is it does have gyro data built into the video files. That means you can use Catalyst Browse or GyroFlow. Catalyst Browse I don't like because it's a separate application I need to install. You need to run the file through Catalyst Browse and then put it in DaVinci for grading and cutting. I prefer to use GyroFlow, which is a plugin that you can install in DaVinci Resolve. You can do the post-stabilization. You just drag it over to the node, and then you can stabilize it and tweak it a little bit to your liking. So I find that's a way better workflow than having to install a separate application. You can turn off all stabilization and just rely on GyroFlow in post if you want. I find it works pretty good on the wide end, but not so much on the telephoto end. Also, you got to make sure your shutter speeds are really high or GyroFlow will look goofy. You can see in this clip I was walking in a redwood forest. It was very high contrast. When I was in the shade, the shutter speed would slow down, and so you can see a lot of artifacts. But then when I walk across the bridge, it was really bright and the GyroFlow worked better. So just some of my experimentation, and hopefully it helps you with what you want to do as far as stabilizing your footage. On the long end, I'm seeing DaVinci Resolve post-stabilization seems to be the most effective way to stabilize versus GyroFlow. I think my plan going forward is to leave standard lens stabilization on all the time for video. This allows me to use GyroFlow on the wide end, or if I have a lot of motion, or use DaVinci Resolve's built-in stabilization on the telephoto end, and then I can have the flexibility to use one or the other, or if this footage is just good enough with lens-based, I'll leave it that way. This seems to be the best way to stabilize this footage. So overall, I know this is an old camera, but it is so small. It's hard to beat the compactness of this camera. I'm very impressed with it. I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna use it for all future trips. It's definitely gonna be staying in my travel bag for the near future. So if you made it to the end, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.